What you doing? I'm the AC, and this is Otaku News Reviews. And I'm going to be reviewing two books this time, two original English light novels called Dragonfly Origins, Episode Amber and Episode Kaito by Joshua Piedra with character art by Alex Garcia. Yes, I have already done discussion videos and the such for the rest of the series, all 12 volumes of Dragonfly. And finally, I get to talk about some of the prequels, some of the origins of two of the main characters, Amber and Kaito, of course. So, I'm not going to say that I inspired these books, but, you know, I've talked to Joshua a bit. He was on my podcast, What You Doing podcast, and I will say I had maybe a little influence in the fact that these ever got created in the first place. Of course, all fans probably influence the authors a little bit on what they decide to write, but I'm just going to say I had a little part of that. So, actually talking about these books, super glad they exist, really enjoyed them. They are super depressing, very, very not happy, which I'm saying with a chuckle, don't know why, never struggled, but overall, great to read, but I will say, you need to read these prequel books after you've already read the rest of the series. In order for it to really pay off, to really get the full happy ending, you need to already know that it's going to end happy, because there's not much in these books, especially in Amber's. It says on the back of the book, right here on the little, well, Amber, sometimes there are happy accidents, and then there's you. Ooh, rough. You already know it's going to be rough. So when you're going to start reading it, and that's really an understatement. This does not exaggerate it at all. It is much more depressing than this little line makes it out to be. But the way it's written, it makes you feel so sad. It makes you mad for the characters, the way they're treated. And like I said, you need to read the rest of the series in order to feel better about yourself, better for the characters, knowing they're going to have a happy ending. If you haven't, or for some reason don't want to read the whole series yet, you want to just jump right to these, go ahead. You've been warned. They're still enjoyable to read. They're still good books to read. As far as these being read, they were both released on the same day, January 4th, 2021. You can read either one first. I would start with episode Amber, because neither one of them really have anything to do with each other until the very end. But I think the way episode Kaito ends, it kind of works better if you've already seen Amber's prequel ending, and then you get to Kaito's prequel ending, because then the end of Kaito is right when they kind of have something to do with each other. And if you read the rest of the series, you know what that is. I'm going to get more into these later. I do want to say one little thing. The fact that they were released on the same day is a little weird to me. Yeah, it's great. I didn't have to wait for whichever one to come later. Awesome. Also, I understand why they both came out, because Joshua has a new series. Let's actually talk about what happens in the story. So like I said, I read them first as Amber. So I'm going to talk about Amber first. I'm not really going to spoil anything. You get some of the backstories in the main series, so this is more just elaborate on what we already kind of knew, get more of that detail. But there is really no happiness at all in this until I guess the very end, when she's supposed to get more happy. But yeah, throughout the whole time, anytime you think something good is going to happen to her, it is either not good at all, or it just makes things worse. I'm glad Joshua doesn't hold back. There's not this like, oh yeah, it's good and bad. It's like, no, this character had a terrible time growing up. He makes sure it's terrible. So, okay, thanks for that. But yeah, overall, Amber starts out as a happy child. The book starts pretty much right when she was born. And Bill, her dad, is, very mad it's not a boy. He's a dick. He's just a straight up asshole. Karen, her mom, regardless of her name being Karen, she actually tries to be a good mother. Is really loving towards her daughter at the very beginning of her life. Eventually, Bill is just completely trying to stay away from this whole having a daughter thing. Karen has to raise her completely by herself, so much so that she kind of just gets sick of Amber. She gets sick of her husband too, but there's not much to do. So eventually both of her parents become really neglectful of her. And that's about the worst of it. Now I'll say, it's not just like, it's neglectful. Yeah, being neglectful towards your children is terrible. But Amber, up until she starts school, pretty much doesn't really care. Of course, Amber's born with white hair. That doesn't really seem to matter as much as to Bill the fact that she's a girl. Even though, they realize it's probably going to give her problems. But yeah, up until she goes to school, Amber's just kind of a happy, excited kid. Then she gets to school, people see her right hair, and kids bully her. Kids aren't naturally mean. Somebody has to make this kid mean for them to be mean. So I'm going to blame that kid's parents. Did not raise a good kid. They suck. Just like Amber's parents. But Amber still turned out alright. Now, this goes on. Amber tried to make friends. It didn't really work out. And she just kind of gets... As someone who gets bullied, you either stay bullied or you kind of fight back. Amber eventually starts getting a temper, getting a violent streaker. We saw a little bit in the main series of that. Starts getting a lot more trouble. At first, their understanding of it, but she gets attacked. At school. Eventually, they're just like, no, this is Amber's fault too. Administration sucks at schools, but then there's all the liability stuff. Whatever. Bill and Karen, they don't want anything to do with it. Anytime they have to do anything for Amber, it's just a hassle to them. So there's not really that much to do, and she goes through this life kind of just alone, beaten, literally, trips to the hospital. Nobody really does anything about it. They expel kids, but then that doesn't really do that much. But we also see a little bit of the little quirks that Amber has as she's an adult. We see how she starts talking. That's kind of weird. It kind of just comes on all at once, but it's kind of like almost a defense mechanism to help her control her anger. But the other thing about Bill and Karen's parenting is, even though they are neglectful, they aren't completely irresponsible. I'm not going to say they're the most responsible parents. When they are caught upon, they still do the stuff, but it's more for their image than just being a responsible parent. Also, they buy Amber stuff. So, it's kind of like, when you see these, like, rich kids that grow up and they seem to have everything except for the love of the parents. That's kind of what Amber is, except for Bill and Karen aren't exactly rich, but they still get her stuff. So that would leave her. So she will leave them alone. And that's about what it comes out to. But it moves on. Eventually she gets all her college money saved up. Which they were saving a college fund for. I don't know. Some of it's weird. The fact that they give her stuff. She had an okay life. It was just her parents were garbage people who were doing whatever they could to ignore her, giving her the bare minimum, doing whatever they could to get her leave her alone. But eventually she moves out. She moves to the city. She gets into Blazing Norris. Then she wins the first tournament. She becomes the #1 player. She's a champion. And it ends with her finally going and handing over her application to Sebastian to work out things and stuff. And that's where it stops. But let me move on to episode Kaito. Now this one does have some happiness in it. Really, I don't have that much to say about Kaito's backstory. I will say I felt him a little bit more maybe, but also a little bit more annoyed by Kaito because his parents are loving. Yujiro and Akane, like they're a loving family. Of course, just like Amber, Kaito, happy child growing up. They used to go to the waterfall. They had nice times together. And then he started school. I don't know what school. Well, no. School is not a bad thing. It does not ruin all kids' lives. It's just, I think, a coincidence in here. But it's also not the school's fault completely on him. It's actually his dad. Yujiro really pressured Kaito to only focus on school. He was not allowed to have any friends. Straight up just tells him, you can't have friends. And yeah, it's because apparently he had a past where he struggled because his dad passed away or something. There's a whole backstory. It's really just a dumb excuse. Pretty much he's like, I struggled, so I want you to struggle so you don't have to struggle. Kind of a little flawed logic. I don't want you to have a life because I don't want you to struggle. Okay. But Kaito, and then Akane, loving, sweet, she's a darling. I love Akane. Really, she barely tries to convince Yujiro not to do this. She tells Kaito this backstory, and Kaito just immediately, no questions, like, okay, I understand. As a child, I don't know, I guess as a child, you want to respect your parents, listen, do what they tell you, especially, you know, Japanese parents. They're a lot more respectful of family. Okay, so Kaito does this. He refuses to make any friends. He focuses on his studies, and he's miserable. And this lasts until high school. He never really tries to fight back against his dad. He doesn't really have a rebellious phase until he just hits that breaking point in high school, which I guess is the peak of puberty. Probably would happen a little sooner, I think. Should have. Middle school is usually the worst time for that stuff. But it happens. He snaps. He finally tells his dad what's what. And all of it stems from meeting a girl that he really likes. Because, hey, girls, you know, puberty, it's a thing. It makes you, I don't know, experience hormones and stuff. So he meets this girl named Mako, and they kind of hit it off. Mako has an entire different abusive backstory. That's also bad, but eventually they get close. This gives eventually Kaito the motivation to set his dad straight. Akane should have really done something more about it. If I was her, I would have been like, Akane, you need to leave this guy. He's being garbage. Either give him an ultimatum, stop being a dick towards your son, or I'm going to leave you. Of course, that doesn't happen. And it's a weird thing, because we know Yujiro is a great father in the main series. So not only is this a backstory, and we get to see the change for Kaito, we also get to see it for his dad. There's pretty much just a flip switch. There's not like a whole lot of argue and compromise. He's like, I understand. Okay, yeah. So then Kaito, he has a much better life in high school. He's enjoying it. He's slowly making friends, trying to, you know, make friends with people he kind of neglected before. Not completely a happy thing going on with him, but he has a Mako, and he's slowly winning her trust. He's joining a club, and he's friends with them, and everything seems to be going fine. Until his parents come back with news that they're going to be moving to America. Now, this is where it's kind of a little skeptical for me on the decisions of Kaito as a character. They tell him they're going to move, but they're going to wait until after high school. Now, Kaito promised Miko he's going to stay with her forever. He won't leave her or abandon her or whatever. So whenever he's told that he's going to have to move, he's torn up about it. He has to eventually go face Mako. Mako is very mad about it. And then there's just a little logic that doesn't make sense. They're moving after he finishes high school, after he's done school, when he's an adult, when he can be making choices on his own. Kaito, my dude, go out on your own. Stay. Make your own choices. If you like her that much, stay. It's not that. It doesn't seem like that big a decision. But I do understand that in Asian cultures, sticking with family, even into your young adult life, is not uncommon. So I guess he still felt that obligation to stick with his parents. He was a young adult. He could have stayed and been with her. I don't know. It was weird. Whatever. Okay. They move. He's all torn up about it. He refuses to be friends with anyone. And his life goes on. He gets more into video games. He eventually goes to a convention and meets Takumi. They don't really hit it off. Takumi, excited to find another Japanese person. Kaito is like, I'm just going to amuse myself with this poor dying kid until he croaks. Really terrible. Really shows that terrible side of Kaito, but he's been, burned by people he thought he could be friends with in the past. His parents kind of ruined any chance of him having meaningful friendships. So I get it. And eventually, though, this is where we see that big flip in Yuji where he's like, no, you should, not be a terrible person. Actually be friends with Takumi. And he, does. He gives it a shot. He becomes closer to Takumi, eventually gets into Blazing Auras, and he eventually gets right up, starts beating Dragonfly, okay, Amber, and becomes the #1 player. And that's kind of where that story ends with Kaito. And that's it. We now have the backstories for these two characters. Now, I will say, looking at the covers for these, I will say, I like the designs of the books, and especially the covers. I think they're really cool how they're done. They're deceiving, though. Really deceiving. Because you have these happy kids. And like I said, at the very beginning, they were happy kids. But growing up, they were miserable. But then you look at the adult versions, they look miserable. But these, at least the way the hair is done, means this was from a time where they were probably at their happiest or on that upward trajectory to be their happiness. And they look miserable here. A little deceiving. They should be happy here, miserable here. Or maybe at least somewhere in between. Maybe a third picture in the middle could, show more of their adolescence and when they're really at their most terrible, most miserable. But it's fine. I like the cover art for it anyway. So another thing that's a little different for these books is there's no extra content at the end, like the rest of the series has. That's fine. It really is. I just want to point it out because it's something I got used to. But it's also unnecessary because these whole books themselves are pretty much just extra content. Something that didn't need to happen, but I'm so glad they did. Now, the real problem is not with the book, it's with me. I'm a greedy reader. Yeah, I think I've admitted this before. I know I did in the podcast I had with Joshua. You give me 2 backstories for these characters. One for Amber, one for Kaito. Now I want more. I know you're off moving, doing From Ash and everything. But there's a whole lot of other characters that could have backstories too. And now that I have these 2, I want more. I'm a greedy reader. I want more. I could have had some with Takumi about what it was like with him growing up with this disease and having moved. Could have had more with Sebastian. He was kind of that rich kid that got everything he wanted except for, a terrible dad. Yeah, there's all kinds of people. Even Kaiser. Maybe McDermott's some backstory. I don't really know anything about Lynn's backstory. You could have had something with her. Probably would have a happy life. But, I just want more. Maybe a collection. But, I don't know. I doubt that. That's it. That is it for my little review. More of a discussion. That I said a lot more than I intended, but there's a whole lot for me to talk about. I'm still trying to flip this switch between I want to talk a whole lot, have a whole discussion about this, and just giving you a review of what to see. Also, I did 2 books. Excusable, I guess. But definitely check it out. I gave you my whole spiel in the beginning. They're depressing, but they're great books. If you already read and are a fan of the original AR Dragonfly series, definitely check these out too. You do not want to miss them. Also, Joshua has other books. Besides just the main series, he has Final Hope, the series he wrote before this, and like I said, From Ash, Alex Garcia. Also is the artist for From Ash, so go ahead, check that out. So that is it for this Otaku News Reviews. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like. If you want to find more of me, go ahead and follow me on all my social medias, all over the place, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. But until next time, I'm the AC. Thank you for watching, and bye.